What's going on, guys? It's your boys Taylor and Taylor, finally coming back at you with another episode of the Empirical Scouting Podcast. This episode, we're actually going to be dropping our first mock draft for the 2024 NFL Draft. I am excited for this one. We haven't really prepped each other on our thoughts and our picks, so it should get quite interesting. Hopefully, I can snag some of my co-hosts' guys. I'll be kicking it off with the number one overall pick, newly appointed Arizona Cardinals. And with this one, I have some thoughts. At the end of the day, with a player such as Caleb Williams on the board, I'm going to go ahead and select Caleb Williams. It's hard to pass on a talent like that. I know the last couple games he struggled. However, some of the struggles I don't really believe is fully on him. That defense can't stop anyone. I mean, I think my high school team could probably score on them about 40, 50 points. And it's just one of those things where I think he's trying to do too much right now, where it's to a fault. Some of those interceptions, it just looks like he's, forcing the ball downfield. He's trying to push the subject and keep his team just like ahead. And because he knows at the end of the day, like his defense is not going to do its thing. And I think, with a little training, in the NFL, he has the talent, he has the raw skills, he has the arm strength, he has that wow capability to where I think he can pretty much step onto any team right now and be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, he's easily the best quarterback prospect in this draft. I think I wouldn't go as far as some of the generational claims are out there. I think Lincoln Riley's a little bit too committed or loyal to Grinch, and that affects the team. But I don't know. I personally am going with Marvin Harrison in that situation, but that's just my opinion, and we're all entitled to it. And
yeah, I mean, if they had like the second overall pick, which they had last week, that would be like my number one target is just stick with Kyler Murray, draft Marvin Harrison. But fortunately, not really unfortunately, but you get the number one overall pick, and me personally, I'm sitting there with Caleb Williams on the board, and I'm just like, I can't pass up on that. I just can't do it personally.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. It's a quarterback situation, and everyone wants to have quarterback situation set up for the future. Mm-hmm. So I guess with number two, the Bears, we are kind of in a similar situation as the Cardinals, although I would say Justin Fields is a little bit less established. I think if they're picking 2 and 3 and they're in this situation, I'm ready to go ahead and draft Drake May for them. And the thought process for me here is just like the Texans last year, go ahead, secure your quarterback at number 2. And that way, if there's anything funky going on where you want to move a pick or something like that, you can do so, and you're not risking losing out on the quarterback. So if they want to take someone else at 3, they can do so, or they can move back. But either way, you take Drake May, and then you look to trade Justin Fields and recover assets for what you spent to get him. I don't think Fields is the future, even though he's shown some improvement. But, yeah, that's where I'm at. Go ahead and take the best quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. At this point, they're, them and Fields are not on the outs, but it's damn close. And at this point, if you have Drake May on the board, I'd pretty much take him. Maybe bring him into camp and then trade Fields midseason if you can, or just flip him during the draft for more capital.
Or just move in a wide receiver.
Just move in a wide receiver now. He still has some talent. The raw skills, you remember the raw skills. So it's just one of those things where
someone out there will give a second or third round pick before him, probably, to be honest, with how much how many quarterbacks are needed all over the league. Someone will take that shot, probably.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I personally would. I mean, with our Falcons, I would take the shot. So, yeah. Moving on to the third overall pick, This one leaves me in a special situation because there's two different ways I can go. The two obvious ones, either get Drake May, another weapon in Marvin Harrison, or get him some help in the offensive line with Olaf Shanu. I'm going to go the more fun route and take Marvin Harrison. I think he is arguably the best talent in the draft. He's showing his form again recently, even though Ohio State really offense hasn't really been rolling, and he just has that it factor. And yeah, I know they have DJ Moore now. He's stud catching the ball pretty quick, but he's not Marvin Harrison. And the rest of that receiving core is just not it. Cole Kmet's a solid, underneath target. Roshan and Khalil Herbert, when he's healthy, are solid, out of the backfield. But you get Drake May, you get him Marvin Harrison, you get him those weapons around him, and I think you also kind of need to build that rapport up with that fan base. I think, and I think drafting Marvin Harrison and Drake May back to back would do more wonders for the fan base than drafting an offensive tackle here. Whether or not that's the way to build the team, it is what it is. But we've seen Cincinnati pretty much do the same thing and make it to a Super Bowl.
Chicago's got a lot of needs, so I mean, you can't go wrong with my opinion, the best overall talent in the draft. The guy I would personally take number one. And I hate you for taking him there because I was going to take him at number 4 for the Giants, truthfully.
It's a good pick.
But with him off the board, I'm going to go with Joe Alt for the Giants. I think Alt has I think he can naturally transition to being a right tackle. And let's move Evan Neal inside. And all of a sudden, that offensive line, if Evan Neal can handle playing guard, which I think he can. I like his struggles. Truthfully, surprised me. I thought he was gonna, be a little bit more solid coming in. But all of a sudden, you got Andrew Thomas when healthy, left tackle, who's shown to be a top tier tackle. Alt coming in and can be a solid right tackle. Hopefully, Evan Neal can hopefully transition guard. You got John Michael Schmitz at center, who's a solid player. And then, look to address wide receiver elsewhere. And, maybe free agency or the later rounds. And hopefully Daniel Jones didn't completely pull one over on the Giants.
Yeah, no, it's starting to look like that. No, I like it. My question is, so Joel, so now you're number one tackle in this draft? Or best fit?
I kind of feel like it's a fit here more than necessarily my number one tackle, but it's kind of close. I still love Fashanu. I don't think Fashanu, Alt, or any of these tackles are surefire franchise tackles that people would want them to be for being the top tackles in the class. So, I kind of like the fit. I think Alt's going to fit in better as a right tackle than Fashanu would probably.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I was just curious there. But we'll move over to the Patriots with the number 5 overall pick. And this one is another one of the situations where I could do what I think they should do, or I can have a little bit more fun with it. For me, I'm now just going to take Olaf Fashanu. They have a lot of holes as well. And it's one of those things where I'm also kind of thinking like Bill, and I know he loves the trenches. I know he wants to build up that line.
Bill's the coach or GM.
Yeah, if he is still a coach. I mean, that secret deal that 4-year deal that he signed makes me think that he is, but We'll see. And for me, the offensive line is weak. I was looking at getting him Mac Jones if he's going to be the quarterback next year. Another weapon. That's something that I was debating on doing. However, I think that team is just so blah that I think get some help on the line. I personally think Mac Jones is better than some people give him credit for. They don't really have any weapons for him, and I'm hoping they can address that later on in the draft and or in free agency. And just build the line, work on that offense because the defense is always going to be solid. If the offense gets rolling, the defense becomes a top 5, 6, 7 defense in the league. It always is, but when your offense can't really move the ball, it doesn't matter how good your defense is. If they're on the if they're on the field 75% of the game, then they're going to give up points, and that's just what's happening here.
Well, so the Patriots are, if I'm not mistaken, they're in line to have a decent bit of cap room coming up. Yeah, they're top 3 in the league in terms of what they'll have for effective cap space. I know you just brought up Mac Jones being potentially better than people think. I don't know if I'm there. I think Mac may be more of a top tier backup material than top tier starter. So my little thought process right now is, what if we bring in Fasciano here, and what if the Patriots make a run for like Kirk Cousins in free agency?
They could do that.
Does that make your team better? And then go get a wide receiver somewhere too.
But yeah, you get Kirk Cousins, you get a free agent wide receiver that's not Juju Smith-Schuster, and I think they can make a run. I mean, it's a vaunted East, but they're always there. They're always competing. Doesn't matter how good the Bills are, doesn't matter how explosive the Dolphins are. They're always there competing, and you give them a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, I can definitely see that happening.
The Packers are in a tough spot for me personally. There's not necessarily a left tackle on the board like I really love with this value at 6. And then I'm also not ready to reach on a quarterback to try to replace Love. I'm not trying to replace Love anyways, unless he completely falls apart. So this is actually kind of a tough call for me, but I'm thinking, man, this is rough actually for me. I'm gonna go with Malik Neighbors. And I know they've invested a lot at wide receiver recently in general. So, people probably hate this. They already have Dubes, who's looking better and better. Wicks has actually been a solid depth piece. I love Jaden Reed out of the slot. Christian Watson looks like a stud. Christian Watson's health kind of scares me a little bit. And I think you add in Malik Neighbors, who has that, top tier upside too. Hopefully, you're just going to be flush with a great offense. And then I think they do need to get another running back, later on in the draft. With that kind of scheme, you can get value later on. So there's no need to try anything here, obviously. And then priority in the top of the second round would be a left tackle. Because I think Bakhtiari's not reliable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that top of the second round, barring a late run on tackles, I think there'll be someone there that they'll be comfortable with, at least bringing in. I like it. I never really was a fan of Christian Watson as much. I mean, elite speed, size and speed combination, but I just never saw him put it all together on the field. And it's kind of like chalking up that, using him more as like a gadget piece, using that speed and strength as more of a gadget, and then get Neighbors as like your number 1 receiver. I think
if he can stay healthy, Watson. If he can stay healthy, Watson and Neighbors would Watson, Neighbors, Dubes, and Reed could be the best wide receiver room in the league if all of them are healthy.
And they've spent a lot of capital in defense already in the past couple of years.
Yeah, that's my thing too. Sure, I could. Then an off-ball linebacker with Devondre Campbell kind of aging a little bit, but you don't want to draft an off-ball linebacker at 6, and especially none of the ones that are in this class. They just drafted Lucas Van Ness for the edge, and then they gave Rashawn Gary an extension, so they're set on the edge. Yep. Corner might be an option, but at the same time, they just took Eric Stokes in the first round a couple of years ago too.
Yep.
And they have Jair.
Jair. Yeah, exactly.
And then they just took Devontae White in the first round. Kenny Clark's a stud. Like, there's not a nose tackle here I'm taking. So, with me not wanting to reach on a tackle or offensive lineman, I mean, let's just make this offense electric as much as we can.
I mean, I like it. That's my kind of style. Especially with, like you said, pretty much your two targets at tackle pretty much off the board, and it might be a little bit early for them to want to reach on the third one when the value is maybe wait to get a lower tier tackle and take an electric receiver. Moving on to 7 with the Colts. They're kind of sad because that was going to be my pick, Elite Neighbors for the Colts. But makes it a little bit easier. This is also going to be slightly a luxury pick, but it's one that I think would fit them perfectly. And it's going to be my boy Brock. The reason I'm choosing Brock Bowers is because I want to give Anthony Richardson as many weapons as possible. Their tight ends have been, solid, like Kylan Grayson and Mo Alley Cox when healthy. Like, they're all solid tight ends, but they're not weapons, in my opinion. And Brock Bowers is a weapon. And not only is he a weapon in the pass game, he can block. And you give, a 6th offensive lineman essentially on that line with Jonathan Taylor, if he stays, Zach Moss, who's balling out right now, and then obviously Anthony Richardson running. There's going to be a lot more holes opening up on that line. And I think just getting a guy who can both, help block on the line, but then also go for 100 yards in the pass game is just something that I personally would want to give Anthony Richardson. And that Colts offense, they're kind of starting to roll with Gardner Minshew, obviously, but that's not going to be the future. Josh Downs looks, electric. I mean, he's very reliable. A lot of catches a game. And Pittman, other than the one time he doesn't get targeted a lot and he complains, he's a pretty solid piece as well. But you add Brock Bowers to that mix, and I think that offense has the potential to be quite electric.
So Pittman's, I think, slated for free agency, if I'm not mistaken. So that's kind of a important thing for them, I think, is at least tagging him to, be able to flip for value or something like that.
Yeah, I assume they would probably just tag him unless they have something else.
I mean, they extended Taylor. They're going to keep Taylor.
Yep.
I kind of hope they keep Zach Moss too, like, so, because it's a 1-2 punch. Like, I want to say, like, I had told a few of our friends like how much I liked him, and then he just didn't put it together the first few years, and I was like,
yeah,
did I just completely? Yeah, like, did I just completely miss the boat? Like, did I see wrong? And he's finally running like how, I thought he could look. So I'm happy to see that. And I think a 1-2 punch with him and Taylor is nice. I loved Josh Downs coming out last year. Like, I was higher on him than a lot of people, I want to say. And then regarding your pick, like, I don't have any actual stats for this. I wanted to try to pull it up real quick, but I'm not going to be able to do it in time. Just from like how much I've watched Anthony Richardson, like, it feels like he likes starting the tight ends. I feel like he threw to the tight ends a lot at Florida last year, and like, that's a position he kind of does use as that safety blanket a lot. So I think Brock Bowers would be nice as that safety blanket, as well as a tight end that can create after the catch and play kind of like a wide receiver as well. So that offense definitely improves. Now the Broncos, this is the hardest one in their situation because Russell Wilson's playing better this year than he was last year for sure, but it's like he's still not playing like they kind of need him to be. And then at the same time,
he's not playing to the value of his contract. I think that's pretty
not at all. Like, he's not playing.
Debatable.
Like, he's playing better, but he's still not playing like a top even 12 to 15 quarterback, I would say, like, conservatively. But this team's in such a weird spot because, like, it seems like they want to move on from Judy, and it seems like they want to move on from Sutton, and then they need an offensive line, and then they need some defensive talent. It's like, what is the direction, and what are we doing here? And I know Sean Payton wants Caleb Williams. Like, he's on record saying he's good. Yeah. Caleb Williams is good enough to tank for. I'm going to do something a little off the wall, I think. I'm going to go ahead and take my QB3, a guy I'm a big fan of, I'm going to go with JJ McCarthy. I think quarterbacks. I don't have JJ McCarthy ranked in the top 10, but I have him ranked high enough to where, as a quarterback, and you want to move on and develop somebody at least, like this is like well worth the pick at this point. And McCarthy's got all the special tools that you could want in a quarterback prospect to build a team around. It's just going to be a matter of if he can put it together. And I think he's been playing better this year mentally, putting it all together. How much of that is sign stealing and or not is a question. I'm just kidding, but like the sign stealing, actually, like someone posed that question on Reddit and about how much the sign stealing would affect your perception of JJ McCarthy as a prospect for the pros, and it doesn't, because any good quarterback that's doing their film work, in general, they're going to be able to sit there and recognize what the defense is doing anyways. And then on top of that, good defenses shouldn't have to signal that much for like any disguises or changes or anything like that. Like, you signal the initial call, but like if something's changing on the fly, your play caller, your team captain, your linebacker usually can check the play, or your safeties can check the play or check the coverage. And in the moment as the play is happening, JJ's still got to be able to see it and pull the trigger, and he's been doing better at that this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like you said, I think Denver, I mean, you can't really just like completely ditch Russ because of the contract. And he's still locked in until I think after 2025, I want to say.
I mean, it's either this offseason or next offseason. They're able to.
It's not this coming offseason. So I know that, but I think it's next offseason. Then
I think if they I don't know for sure, but I think if they designate him as a post-June 1st cut this year, they can move on. They're just taking a $30 million cap hit or something like that, but or dead cap for that. But that's the most reasonable it's going to be, unless they full on wait till next year or 2 years from now, I should say.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I think that it's a solid situation to where with Denver, you get JJ. He's not going to be the starter immediately. I think you just have to give it to Russ, and then once that happens, you let him learn underneath him. I think Russ is a good enough person to help him out a little bit. You get that experience of playing or not really playing, but learning in the NFL, and then you let him come in mid-season, maybe next following season, and I think we both think that JJ is going to be a pretty solid quarterback in the NFL. So I think that'd be a good situation than rather than him just jumping straight onto the NFL field day one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and Russ has had his fair share of being missing games last few years from some kind of injury. So I think the odds would be JJ would get on the field sooner than later, anyways.
Probably. And then so moving to the number 9, it makes it a little bit easier for me because I was also considering similar situations. That I was also considering JJ here. Don't know if I would have actually selected him, but it makes it easier because now he's off the board. So I'm gonna go with my edge 1 and rebuild that defense with Jared Verse. They need some kind of help on that defense. That vaunted defense that was from the Super Bowl year and even the year before and after, it's just not there anymore. And they need help getting after the quarterback. And I mean, Jared Verse could have been selected even higher than this last year, decided to come back to Florida State, I guess make a title run. I'm assuming that's why, maybe NIL. But, he's still going to get selected in the top 10, in my opinion. He's still that talent, and he's been showing it this year. He's not, leading the nation in sacks, but just the nature of the beast of, playing the competition you're playing. You're not going to necessarily always, put up in numbers. But, the tape's there, the talent's there. And I think it's just a no-brainer. Just LA, just get another pass rusher.
Yeah, that's a slam dunk pick, truthfully. For Washington's, in a situation where they're also looking to move either Sweat or Chase Young. My assumption is whatever one they do not move, they'll keep next year, as both are slated to be free agents. I would assume if the rumors slip true and they trade Sweat to Atlanta,
Hopefully.
that they just franchise tag Chase Young probably. Um, I mean, they're in a situation too where Kendall Fuller's set to be a free agent, and um, Forbes has not worked out well so far at corner. And I don't know if they also kind of did this with Jamin Davis when they drafted him, and that they threw him out there immediately and he struggled and they benched him, and then he's back out there starting again. I want to say they benched him. Don't quote me on that, but like he struggled initially for sure. So I think that may just be like a Ron Rivera coaching tactic, and hopefully Forbes will be back out there at not if not this year, next year, like as a starter. And they haven't been using Jartavius Martin a lot too, who I was a big fan of. I think he's can contribute. So with the idea that they want to keep a strength, and they're losing Sweat, and then with the thought process of tagging Chase Young, I'm going to take Dallas Turner, who has been playing pretty well this year off the edge, and it just keeps that unit an elite unit in the NFL.
Yeah. And it's just another Alabama D lineman that goes to Washington. I feel like that's just on repeat over and over again. I mean, it works for them, and their D line's always solid. So, no, I like it. Kind of sad for Arizona because that was a guy I was looking at. Also, but I'm also gonna get a little fun with this one. With Arizona at 11, we just drafted Caleb Williams. We have Kyler Murray. We have a pretty solid, not solid offensive line. Don't get me wrong, but we just did invest a high first round pick on Paris Johnson. So I'm not necessarily gonna push the subject grabbing another offensive lineman here, whether or not that's smart. I think we could salvage our offensive line somewhere else, and I'm gonna go with Keon Coleman. I definitely spelled that wrong. Oh no, I didn't. And so what my reasoning behind Keon Coleman is, I want to get Caleb a bigger receiver. I mean, we have Hollywood for the rest of this year, so I don't even know. I don't think he's a free agent, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
I think he's slated to be a free agent, but
Okay,
I think
so we
there's
can
been
tag
talk
him.
they want him back.
Okay, so we're Hollywood's solid. He's a quick, smaller receiver though. Michael Wilson's emerging, but I don't know if I can trust that injury history, and I don't know if I can trust if he's going to be like my number one go-to receiver. Then you have other guys like Rondell Moore and so on. But with Keon
The
Coleman,
infamous.
yeah, I know the infamous Rondell Moore with us, and so with Keon Coleman, he gives you that size. He has enough speed to break away when he needs to. He's shown the contested catch abilities. He's just he's taken over that wide receiver one role in Florida State, and he has just completely shot up draft boards, and obviously now all the way to the 11th overall pick, in my opinion. And I think similar idea with Chicago Bears, so you can see a trend with me. But I'm a fan of getting your quarterback a reliable number one target, wide receiver target. We've seen it over and over again recently with Dolphins, Eagles, Bengals. So I'm gonna repeat that process with both the Bears and the Cardinals here and get Keon Coleman to Arizona with Caleb Williams.
I love Keon Coleman. Um, I've compared him to Julio Jones to you, not necessarily in terms of the level of talent, but just like play style, just being an athletic freak. I need to dive in like on the full all 22 when I get a chance of him, but like just from what I've seen, it looks like this guy could be an elite wide receiver, and this wide receiver class looks so good on paper right now. Coming off the heels of the Cardinals picking, and the Raiders are now up for me. We really should have established what's going to happen with Kyler since the Cardinals took Caleb. Because we got two back-to-back teams here that could use a quarterback like Kyler Murray in a trade. And then we have the Falcons at 19 who also could use it. I'm, for my own headcanon, going to assume Kyler's ending up in either Vegas or Tampa, to be honest, because I don't think the Falcons would do it. I think Vegas is actually a reasonable thought process, especially if they move on from McDaniels. Um, Jimmy's injury history already like showing up this year, and him. I want to say it was a 1 year deal off the top of my head. I don't know for sure if it was a more than 1 year deal, but we know Jimmy's not a long term guy anymore at his age. So I think you bring in Kyler and that keeps Devontae Adams like that appeases him a little bit and he's okay staying, and that's kind of a big basis of your team there already.
Yeah, I'm
Now the
cool. I'm cool
question,
with assuming Kyler to Las Vegas.
but now the question is like, I feel like anything that moving. Well, I feel like they would lose the leverage. I don't know if they necessarily would get pick 12, maybe like a
That
second round pick in a future first or something.
yeah, I don't think that Vegas would necessarily have to trade 12 because you have 1.01. So really, if you're Vegas, you go, okay, you pass on Caleb Williams. Let's see you pass on Caleb. I'm going to sit back and I'll offer you a second, and like you said, maybe a future second or second and third and a future second, something like that. Maybe a second that can turn into a first, something like, that gets sense. But I'm personally, if I'm Vegas, I'm going, I will take Kyler, but I'm not trading you 12 in that situation. Kind of like the Jets and the Packers situation, where the
Right.
Packers wanted a higher pick and Jets are like, no, you can just keep them. I don't
And
care.
Kyler's obviously a much better talent than Rosen, and this directly is like relates to Kyler
Yeah.
too. But like the Cardinals lost all leverage when it became an open secret they were taking Kyler, which it did long before the draft actually happened that year. But operating under the assumption that they add in Kyler, this defense has some holes on it right now, and it doesn't help that Tyree Wilson's not playing up to his draft capital. But you got the number one corner on the board. Jacorian Bennett's been playing pretty good. I like Nate Hobbs, but let's just add Kool-Aid to the Raiders and give them a little bit more talent on defense.
I mean, they need it. They need it all over the defense. So I don't mind it at all, especially if they give him Kyler. If you can appease Devontae to stay. I mean, I don't know if Jacoby's only on the 1 year deal, but
No, I think he's a multi-year deal. If
okay.
I'm
And you saw, yeah. So I think you focus on the defense here. You added Kyler, and you piece together the offense from there. So we'll move to the 13th with the Buccaneers. I am comfortable assuming that they're sticking with Baker. I mean, he's been playing fine with them. I'm not saying that they won't draft a quarterback later, but I don't think they necessarily have to go out and get a free agent, trade a guy, or draft one at 13 in this situation. So for me, I am going to try to remake a strength that used to be a strength for them, at least in the last couple of years with Tom Brady. Whether or not that was his making or not, I don't know. But I'm going to address the offensive line because I personally don't think it's been up to par where it needs to be. So I am going to go with J.C. Latham. I spelled that wrong. Oh, I guess the periods. There we go. J.C. Latham from Alabama. He's just a solid, plug and play type guy. I wouldn't necessarily put him up in the category with Olu and Joel. So I agree with having him quote unquote slip down the board a little bit, but then also same time tackles high priority. So they get pushed up a little bit. And while I might not think he's the 13th overall player, I think for Tampa they need this guy. And with uh, Dallas Turner and Jared Verse both out, I could have gone another edge rusher because they can always get after the ball. That's always been a strength of theirs. But for me, I'm gonna just add to that offensive line and try to make it a little bit more of a strength. Maybe go next to was it your boy Cody Malk. So they got
he's
him. So
been he's been up and
yeah,
down this year.
I know. But I think that's what they need to address. That's what I would address if I was them, and I would just run it back with Baker.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see them take keep Baker and either round 2 or 3 look to one of these quarterbacks because this is going to have a class where they'll be able to do that and
Mhm.
hope someone develops because there is one quarterback I think could potentially be worth this pick here, but it would still be stretched. And you know who I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
with the Chargers, you know they have some decisions to make this coming off season. Kenneth Murray is slated for free agency. He's been a tad better like this year, but do they want to pay him? Especially after drafting Deion Henley. Um, and then they just traded away J.C. Jackson, uh, who was a big flop for them in free agency. And then, Eckler and Everett are also slated for free agency. And, not that Everett's this elite talent, but he's still, kind of a starter for them. And it looks like Alohi Gilman's also slated for free agency.
So a lot of guys.
Yeah. And the reason I'm noticing Gilman is because I'm going to take Cooper DeJean here. And I think it gives them some flexibility where if they want Cooper to play safety and pair him with Derwin, or if they want him to play corner and pair him with Asante Samuel, they can do so because Cooper has that kind of versatility. I kind of like him better at safety. I didn't even realize that our sheet had updated for him to be a safety rather than corner.
He could be either one, though.
But yeah, it can be either one, and it also kind of adds a little bit of he's a dynamic returner as well. As we saw with the Ghost fair catch play.
Yeah.
So add some talent to their secondary.
Yeah, I mean, that defense always seems to underperform, even no matter what names they have on that defense. So I think their offenses are going to roll with Herbert. They have the weapons. They might have to replace some of the receivers every night, like as they get older, and depending on contract situations. But I know with Keenan Allen, but and who knows with Austin Eckler. But at the end of the day, I definitely think that with Justin Herbert, he can kind of boost up some guys and focus on the defense here. So I agree with the pick. So at 15 with Tennessee, kind of going two ways here because as we unfortunately just saw, they might have. I mean, it's one game. It's usually quarterbacks for some reason on their debuts because there's no film, there's no tape on them. They typically ball out. Unfortunately, that was against our Falcons. And
okay.
I don't.
Sorry, I hate to cut you off here.
He did well.
DeAndre Hopkins mauled AJ Terrell.
That was one touchdown.
Why is that not called?
It should have been called.
And then on top of that, our defense just played complete crap.
Yeah.
Credit to Will Levis, he actually played pretty dang well.
Yeah, he played a lot better.
But at the same time, not trying to sound like a hater or salty or anything. A lot of it felt like more the defense not executing and him just managing that.
Yeah,
or obviously you got to take advantage of it, but a lot of it felt like he was just doing what was given on the silver platter for him.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it, but I think he played a lot better, at least in my expectations. Now, granted, I want to see him game 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. But it looks like they're probably going to stick with Will Levis. I'm sure they wanted to get move on from Tannehill and see what they had in Levis or Willis to see what they want to address here in the situation. But I think as it sits today, that at 15. They're just going to roll with Will Levis because we've only seen one game, and that's what I have to base it off of. You have Nuke, like you mentioned, but that's really it. So I wish Keon Coleman or Malik Neighbors would have fell to me here at 15, but they didn't. So I'm going to go with my next receiver that I think could be a little bit more electric than a couple others that are still on the board, and I'm going with Rome. 6'3" guy who just is explosive. I mean, you see what he's doing in Washington. I mean, people know he's getting the ball. He's still a drop 100 on your head. So I think you pair him up with Nuke if he's still going to be there next year. I'm not 100% sure, but even if he's not, I think Rome's a good guy to bring into Tennessee, build that rapport with Will Levis or whoever ended up being the quarterback, of course. And I would just, like I said, I want to get my quarterback's weapons. Because at the end of the day, you could have the greatest offensive line in the world. If you didn't know when to throw to and they can get open, then it's not going to do anything. So I think the offensive line has enough talent to where you get him another young weapon and, he can start, progressing from there.
I think the line needs work still, truthfully, but they've added pieces and they can add pieces, on day 2 if needed. I think it's Rome is kind of a I don't know how to describe it. Like he's in that same mold almost as
That
Traylon,
it's
Traylon
true.
and DeAndre Hopkins. In a lot of ways, where like he's like this freak. Like I know Hopkins isn't necessarily a freak athlete, like testing wise, but like they're these athletes that just like can go up and get the ball over defenders.
Yeah.
And Traylon hasn't lived up to that, like which, and he AJ Brown's like that too, as we just saw. So like Rome fits the mold almost of like what they've gone after at wide receiver, and hopefully he works out better than Traylon has.
Yeah.
I think Hopkins would be a great person to teach him. Um, I like the pick. Uh, this the Saints. They're let's just be honest about the situation. Trevor Penning's terrible,
Yeah.
and they need a tackle. I don't necessarily love Derek Carr. Like, I think I truthfully kind of would rather see Jameis Winston as my starting quarterback than Derek Carr right
You
now.
already know my thoughts on Derek Carr, so
Yes, I do, and I know my wife's thoughts on Derek Carr.
yeah.
So this guy's hurt this year. Currently, I don't know if they've said if he's going to be able to get back. If he is able to get back, I heavily suspect he will do his best because that's just the culture this program has built. I'm going to take Amarius Mims. Um, I don't know off the top of my head. You're going to know better. If I don't think Mims was playing left tackle at the start of the year. I think he was going to be y'all's right tackle, if I'm not mistaken.
He
Um,
they rotate a lot. And I want to say yeah, he started out, but I know when he got injured, I'm pretty sure he was at the left tackle position.
well, that's just a bonus then. Yeah, I'm taking him here to play left tackle, try him out there, and then you can maybe move Penning inside or something. I don't know, cut him for all I care because I don't think he's good.
For our
Saints
sake,
fan.
we want him to play, but no,
Uh,
I agree. He's not good. He's been pretty much a bust of a pick, and they need to protect their quarterback, whoever it ends up being. As best as they can. And I mean, I like Amarius Mims. He's just an athlete. Yeah, I love athletes. So obviously, and I'm also a homer pick. So we'll move on to 17 with the New York Jets. I'm assuming Aaron Rodgers is going to be back. It looks like he's like close to being back now with all these reports of him throwing and walking and everything. And there's some miraculous miracle that he's doing. But it's really just
I have a
look on your.
feeling that's going to end so badly. Sorry,
I
Jets fans, but
I hesitate to, but I'm just going off of reports. I'm not a doctor either, so I'm just going to trust it. But I think at this point, same similar situations as always with them. It seems like recently, their defense is good. It's really good. But when you can't move the ball, they're on the field a lot, and sometimes eventually offenses will take advantage of it. So with Aaron Rodgers back, I think they'll be able to move the ball. And I need to protect that Achilles now as much as possible. So I'm just going to literally just look on my board, see what any offensive lineman. It doesn't even matter what position at this point, in my opinion. Like just get an offensive lineman in the program, and I'm going to take since you took Amarius Mims, unfortunately, and I won't be able to take him. So I'm going to take Graham Barton, Duke, right? I
love me
believe
some
so.
Graham Barton.
I know you do. I know he's. So does he play tackle at Duke? And it's just that he's
He,
projected to play inside because
yeah, so
that's
he's kind of like
that's a guy that I think that would be perfect for them because you can give him some run at probably right tackle or so. I mean they need the help. But inside also is like one of those situations where they've invested in the tackles. Mekhi Becton, and I'm forgetting who's the other guy that they
apparently
invested.
they're gonna put
Barrett Tucker.
Bear
New York,
Tucker at right
yeah.
tackle next year.
Okay, so then they need things because I mean Kai Becton I feel and Elijah Vera Tucker seem to always be hurt. And even when they're on the field, they've been playing solid, but I don't think the high picks that they've invested on they're showing that talent necessarily. So you bring in Graham Barton who has experience playing tackle in the ACC. but then also is more projected to be playing inside. And I think day one he'll be a starter somewhere in one of those five positions.
So Graham Barton's like a lot like Peter Skoronsky in a lot of ways from last year. Plays tackle at Duke right now, plays left tackle. He's been very good at left tackle for Duke, but he's got, he's a little bit smaller for a tackle. His arms are a little bit shorter. And on top of that, his first year starting at Duke, he played center. So he's going to be a guy that has true five position flexibility probably at the next level, which fits well with the Jets because if they want to play Tucker at right tackle, and then if Becton's back and stays healthy, they can play Barden inside. And then
that would be
something happens with Becton or something, they can slide Barden out. Like they can work it around. I love Graham Barden. I really do. The Bengals are in a situation where it looks like they may be set to lose Tyler Boyd. They might be set to lose T. Higgins. They might be set to lose Jonah Williams, which are three starters for them. I'm trying to see here. I'm thinking this feels like a reach to me, but he's my best one available, and this is a guy I think it's important for. Oh, actually, I just realized someone else is available that's going to be better. I'm actually going to go with, I'm going to butcher the name, Talise Fuaga from Oregon State.
Yeah.
Just with Jonah Williams set for free agency, regardless of what's going on, they have Orlando Brown on the left tackle spot. Bring in Fuaga. Let's protect Joe Burrow. It's straightforward.
Yeah.
And then figure out the wide receivers. They're important for Joe Burrow, but figure that out after the offensive line.
And he has Chase, so
Chase is that dude.
So you have a guy. You don't have to go find the guy like what I've been trying to do with this draft.
Andre Yeshivas, God, I hope I didn't butcher that name. I probably did. He's got 2 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, I think. He was a athlete that, had upside. Was a developmental type wide receiver that had good upside. So hopefully he can step up and fill either, if not the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 role next year. So may only need one guy, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And we always got to protect Joe Burrow. That's priority number one in Cincinnati, as it has been since they drafted him. Haven't done the greatest job, but they have tried, so we'll give it to them. Moving on to our Atlanta Falcons. It's easy. You know exactly where I'm going. Now, which guy? That's going to be up for debate. At this point, yep. Really? You ready for that?
That's what I'm figuring you're doing.
I'm not, actually.
Love it for me as a drafter right now.
I love Quinn so much, but it's just he just hasn't taken that that next step that I'm hoping for. He looks great against Alabama. Go out against Iowa State or whatever and not look as good. So when the lights shine bright, at least he's looking good. And I would not be opposed for us taking Quinn Ewers whatsoever. But I wish JJ McCarthy because that's really who I want here. But obviously he went a lot higher. I would have been willing to move up as well. Desperately, I hope we are. I send you mocks all the time with us trading up to 2 for Drake May, so I'm ready for it. I don't care about Desmond Ridder anymore. I don't care about Taylor Heineke, Logan Woodside, all of them. You can cut all of them. I don't care. This one, it banks on, I guess. It doesn't go against with the pick that I necessarily enjoy as much because how I always talk about how I wanted my quarterback to move, but I can't deny what he's been doing. I'm going Michael Penix. That arm talent, I can't deny. He's proven me wrong all year long. I was not high on him at all, and not high, but he was my QB 5 or 6, and I am gonna bring him to Atlanta at least for now. Distribute that ball to Kyle Pitts. Distribute that ball to Drake London, and hopefully we bring another receiver as well. Be able to hand the ball off and throw the ball, hand it all the ball off to Bijan. I don't care how you have to give him the ball. give him the ball. Get rid of Arthur Smith if you have to. I don't care. But I want a guy who's going to get my playmakers the ball. And there's Michael Penix is going to be that guy. Now, I will say, I was this close to making this pick Bo Nix. I was this close.
That would have been worse.
Really? Because I'd be the guy who's going to get him the ball.
Look,
I'll let you take the floor.
I'm going to be probably in the minority when I say this, but, like, I can't take Bo Nix or Penix in the first round, personally. I can't take Jaden Daniels in the first round. I can't. That's me personally speaking. Like, I understand if people disagree, they're entitled to their own opinion. Penix has too many issues with his base and then too much of an injury history for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to he helps that offense. Like, he's a good player in his own right, but he has helped a lot by how good his three receivers are, and then how good his offensive line is. And then Bo Nix has also helped a lot by how good his team is and how little pressure he's been under.
It could be true, but all I'll say is that a lot of people said the same thing about Tua. And
yeah, no, I get it, and I especially don't like any quarterback here as long as Arthur Smith's the coach.
I think we both agree with that.
I hope it changes. Like, I hope my opinion changes. I'm out on Arthur Smith, truthfully, right now. But I'm gonna make the Vikings pick easy. Kirk Cousins is set to be a free agent. He just tore his Achilles. I mean, I don't know what this team's future is right now. I don't think they even want to. I think they wanted to be picking lower than 20. Like, they probably will now that Kirk's hurt.
Depending on what they do tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make it easy though, and give them a new quarterback for the future.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for Atlanta, Quinn, Penix, Bo, any of them. I mean, at this point, I'm just taking a quarterback at 19 at this point. Hopefully lower, so we can get a little maybe into the JJ McCarthy territory. But I think getting a guy like Quinn could be good. That arm talent, getting the ball to Jordan Addison and Jefferson, I think would be pretty on par. He's a little bit more of a athlete than Kirk Cousins, but I think he'd be able to distribute the ball similarly. Obviously, Kirk a lot better now because he's had that experience, but starting off, he was a little rough around the edges as well. So getting that experience and having Jefferson and Addison as your receivers and TJ Hawkinson underneath. I mean, you don't have to have that much talent right off the bat. You have your safety blankets.
Either you bring back Akers or you get a mid-round running back and that zone scheme. That offense will be humming.
Yeah. So moving on to 21, which Pittsburgh. I'll make it pretty easy as well. I don't like running out the ghost of Patrick Peterson out there. You have crap. How am I forgetting his name? Who did they just draft? Joey Porter Jr. Yeah, I was like, how am I forgetting his name already? They drafted Joey Porter Jr. He's been pretty solid as well. But you need some help back there. I'm gonna go with the guy who's probably looked at before the season a little bit higher. Be dropped down a little bit in the ranks, and especially after 2 weeks ago, kind of got burnt by Marvin Harrison. Yep. But I think he has a little bit more talent. Getting burnt by Marvin Harrison is nothing to scuff at.
Yeah.
I wish. The thing is, the reason that I was a little hesitant is because he doesn't have that size. And I would have liked him. I mean, he's 5'11", so I would say over 6 feet, 1 inch. But I would like for them to get a little bit more size of a corner here. But Kalen King, just knowing how he was looked at preseason, he's played fine for that Penn State defense. Not gonna hold getting burnt a little bit by Marvin Harrison too much against him, and I'm gonna slot him as my CB2 with Joey Porter Jr.
So Kalen King's been a guy I was higher on than consensus going back to the summer. I had him as my cornerback 1. I want to say for the summer. I like Kalen King. It kind of I'm gonna be honest. You can call me what you want to call me. I wussed out on him being my corner 1 for this draft and went Kool-Aid as a reaction to that. And I hate that I did that. But I'm not saying Kalen King's going to come in and be a top tier corner immediately. the way this guy was, but it gives me AJ Terrell vibes where AJ Terrell got dogged on by
Yeah.
Jamar Chase.
Oh man, yeah.
And we were all like,
that was worse. That was like 3 times worse than what Jamar Chase did to AJ Terrell.
yeah, well, I mean, but like after that game, though, we were all like, man, AJ
Yeah.
Terrell's just not it, and like we were like, shit, I don't want AJ Terrell in Atlanta, like in the first round. And then what do you know, AJ Terrell's in a like borderline elite corner probably, and it was just because Jamar Chase is just that dang good.
Everyone gets done up by Jamar Chase now.
Yeah,
so.
like I kind of am just drawing that parallel because like I think Kalen King's pretty dang good. I think Marvin Harrison is just that dang good.
I do think like you would agree that he's kind of slipped a little bit in like
overall
boards.
Yeah, he definitely has. Yeah,
because I mean I would think he would be more of like a mid-teen pick. Typically, especially being that CD1, CB2 with Kool-Aid. Typically those get a little pushed up higher once the first one gets off the board. So yeah, I think Pittsburgh kind of sits back and they get a talent that others are looking at them a little bit lower, but they know what they have with them.
Yeah. So the Texans coming up, Rankins is older and set to be a free agent. They don't really have a lot of like interior line talent. So I'm just gonna make this easy and go with Johnny Newton and be done with it. Like I think let D'Amico cook with some defensive line talent.
Yeah, I mean, put Deshaun next to Will Anderson. Yeah, I don't know why I'm calling it blanks right now. I keep seeing all these names on my screen, and I'm like, oh my god. But Will Anderson, yeah, and I think let D'Amico have his defense. They have CJ who's looking great. Their wide receiver core is looking pretty solid. So, I think keep adding to that defense, and they're gonna be surprisingly good.
Is a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I know. Who would have thought? Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and Tank Dell. But hey, they've been balling out. Moving over to the 49ers, which is kind of a surprise for them picking at 23. But
3 losses in a row, right?
I want to say they've taken a couple L's. So here, I think personally my defense is fine. They're good. After I'm evaluating all these losses, but 3 by Brock Purdy, I still think I'm going to keep him as my quarterback in the future. And I'm kind of sitting back and evaluating, and I go, okay, what's the difference? What happened those first like 10 or 11 games in a row that he won in the regular season versus now? Is when he faces pressure, he's not nearly as efficient. And their offensive line, I mean, they have Trent Williams, but other than that, isn't the greatest. I think just adding talent here is priority number one. My wide receivers are just fine. I have George Kittle, who's going to be a 6th offensive lineman. So it's going to be a little bit of a reach, but tackles are typically reached upon, especially in the first round when you need to. Now there's a couple of guys all in this situation in the same thing, but I'm going to go with a guy who I think is a little bit of like a freak, and I'm going to go with Patrick Paul from Houston. Just get that big, burly guy into the San Francisco. Let Shanahan, show him the schemes, show him how to just get him acquainted with them. He doesn't necessarily need to start day one either, but you get him to play right tackle along with Trent Williams on the left side, and I think just getting someone who can keep Brock Purdy away from trouble is the key to the 49ers' success. And however necessary is you do it. So you just pretty much like I did with Green Bay. Is I just look at my board, I find an offensive lineman, and I take them. So I'm going with Patrick Paul today.
The Bills can go a few directions here. They could use upgrade at wide receiver to pair with Diggs and Kincaid if he keeps improving. Offensive line is something that is always helpful for a guy like Josh Allen. Corner and safety though are 2 positions that they really got to look at. Elam has been a healthy scratch too often this season for a guy that's in his second year. And Poyer and Hyde are aging. So we're left with either the toss-up of corner or safety. and I think you can find production from a safety either later in the draft or in free agency a little bit easier than like a top tier corner. Uh, so I'm gonna go ahead. And I don't love the value of this like personally, but I'm gonna be honest with myself, and I know a lot of people that know more than me about football um, believe in this guy as a top tier corner. Um, and who knows, I may come around on it before draft time, but I'm gonna go with Nate Wiggins. And hopefully you take Wiggins and pair him with Trey White, and Trey White can hopefully stay healthy,
Yeah, that's
and
key one.
hopefully this defense gets a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a spot on that, especially on the defense, is that secondary. Not saying they don't have the talent, but it's the health that is the biggest concern for Buffalo, and we see right now out there struggling just to stay healthy. So you just add another body into that room. I think he's like, ain't he like 6'2", 6'3"?
Wiggins,
Hey, Wiggins,
yeah, he's
yeah,
like 6'1",
like
6'2".
he's a big
He's
body too.
long.
Yeah, so it's
He's
like,
super long.
yeah, so I think you get him in there with Trey White, and I think it's a good spot. It's a good spot for a cornerback. Moving on to 25 with Detroit. They are also now looking for a corner because they thankfully traded Okuda to us for really cheap.
I'm hoping we extend him, truthfully.
He's been playing great, and I think Detroit. I mean, he's needed a change of scenery. I don't think he would have done the same thing in Detroit. It's one of those situations where he's run his course there. All the injury history, he just needed a completely new scene. And now he's playing well. Not maybe the Jeff Okuda that we all thought coming out of Ohio State, but they're going to go right back to the well and go with Denzel Burke. They need a corner. It's a very similar situation, I feel like, because Denzel Burke, I remember, he was looked at as like, oh, he's going to be the next like CB1, CB2 coming up. And he hasn't really lived up to that hype. But he does show promise, and I'm pretty sure he was. What isn't he the one that was a wide receiver? And they transitioned him to cornerback, I think. I believe that's the
I don't
case.
recall off the top of my head,
But
truthfully.
maybe he was in high school. He played wide receiver. I just remember something about Denzel Burke, and he was
Yes, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I
That
think
was
he at
it.
least
So
played wide receiver in high school.
he has that ball skills, and like yes necessarily has the covering skills, hasn't 100% been there. But we've seen in the NFL that you don't necessarily have to cover guys to get big contracts. You just have to intercept the ball. So I'm going to give Detroit Denzel Burke, go right back to the Ohio State well, and hope they don't miss like they did with Jeff Okuda.
I mean, yeah, they have like talent at corner, but they don't have like a top tier guy right now, in my opinion. And I think adding that could be pretty helpful. That team just keeps getting better and better. Cowboys are, man, they're interesting because who knows what their defense looks like next year schematically, like number one, and if Dan Quinn's still their coordinator, God bless whatever team decides to take a chance on him.
Yeah.
I don't think Mozzie Smith's been playing too well, if I recall correctly. Like,
he isn't standing out whenever I watch them, so he might just do his job, but nothing like they wanted to take him as.
Deron Bland's been pretty dang good. Overshown and Van Der Esch are hurt. Van Der Esch is like, unfortunately, that's just kind of become his career. Like what he's not been able to stay healthy, unfortunately. Man, I want to give them a wide receiver because like I feel like they need like a solid secondary guy like beyond CD because like Gallup, every time I feel like I see him, he's dropping it or something's going wrong.
He had that 1 year early on. That was about it.
Yeah, and I mean Brandon Cooks is a good wide receiver, but like Brandon Cooks is also aging. But instead, I think I'm gonna give them. I'm gonna give them Barrett Carter.
Okay.
And the reason I'm doing that is they had drafted Micah Parsons originally to pair with Van Der Esch as inside linebackers or off-ball linebackers, and Parsons is full on transition to playing edge for good reason as an elite edge player. So you add in Barrett Carter, who's kind of like I'm not saying he's the same as Micah Parsons, but it's similar in a lot of ways. It's like this very good athlete that's at linebacker. Still kind of learning the position though, like the nuances of it. You put him there, let him coach him up. You have him mentored by Vander Esch, who's good at the nuances of it. It's just he's not healthy anymore. And hopefully you're getting some dynamics, whatever. You're getting your linebackers better.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I get it. And I mean, obviously the whole don't draft a linebacker in round 1 situation comes into effect here.
26, though.
And it's a luxury for them. I mean, like you said, they can address wide receiver elsewhere and still have their guy in CeeDee Lamb.
This is such a deep wide receiver class that
they can wait.
There's going to be a guy like Jalen McMillan or Jalen Polk, who's also from Washington.
Yeah.
There's going to be
Troy Franklin.
Troy Franklin got to the end of the second round.
I don't know about end of the second round.
That's blessed.
No. I'm saying into the second round.
Third event's going to be available in the second or third round. Shepard from Vanderbilt and there's going to be talented. All the USC players, USC wide receivers, are all going to be probably day 3 picks.
That's right.
But they're talented players. Like, they're guys I would take a swing on, truthfully, on day 3. So I think they're going to be able to get better at wide receiver, they don't need to do it right away, like the first round.
No, I agree. And just add to that defense, especially if you do lose Dan Quinn, then you want to make sure you have as much talent there as possible. But I like it. I know you're really high on Derek Carter as well, so it's solid to me. I'm gonna move on to 27 with Jacksonville. I'm gonna go with a guy who I believe is probably the most polished in his position, and it's something that they could use to pair after completely botching their number 1 overall pick. In my opinion, and this is coming from a Georgia fan. You know on record that I disagree with taking Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson. Wow, that's hard to say. I disagree with it so much, and I got all the the RAS scores and the speed and the size and all that. But I was like, I'm taking the guy number 1 overall who's on the line. I need him to get after the quarterback, and that's just not something Trayvon Walker really did. And he's been playing a little bit better this year. But I need to get back to Jacksonville. I mean, Josh Allen's just doing as much as he can, but he can't do it himself, even though he's doing damn close recently. So I'm gonna go with the guy who I think is the most polished, rather than the guy who is probably better than Trayvon Walker, but similar situation where it's all the RAS score and the freak list and all that kind of stuff. As much as I like Chop Robinson, I'm gonna go with Leatu Latu.
Love it for me
because I think a guy who can actually show it on the field is one of those, just a guy that I want to take, especially later in the first round. You can take guys that maybe not have the RAS scores and the mold necessarily, but they just are producers. And you get Leatu on the other side of Josh Allen on third downs, in big situations where you need to get pressure on the quarterback. And I think Jacksonville's defense completely flips. They're solid now, but I think they give up a little bit too much because you double team Josh Allen. There's not really someone on the other side of the ball that can really get after the quarterback. And, who they have? Yeah, they have Devin Lloyd, Foyese Oluwakin. I even when he was at Atlanta, I never really could pronounce his name. Yeah, Foye. So they have them at linebackers as guys that can kind of spy and cover the flats and everything for them, but they don't really have anyone that can get after the quarterback other than Josh Allen. So I'm gonna kind of semi right or wrong. Pretty good value as well, as I've seen Latu really high up on boards, and he kind of fell in this situation. And I'm just gonna hopefully bring the Saxonville back to Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, Latu is a guy that's gonna be, his draft stock's gonna probably be dependent upon his physicals at the combine with his injury history.
Yeah.
If it checks out, round 1 probably still a possibility, like Jalen Phillips was, or alternatively he may fall. But I'm gonna go ahead. I got upset for a second because I thought you were taking Chop Robinson,
Yeah.
and you didn't, and now I'm happy. So I'm going to go
Yep.
ahead and take him for the Ravens. You have Jadeveon Clowney, who's, you know, do I want to say, like, he's playing okay for Baltimore, but like he's not the number one
So
overall pick.
I've been
Jadeveon Clowney.
obviously watching Baltimore a little bit more because, like, now that I'm married into also a Baltimore fandom, I pay attention to them a little bit more. And he does just fine, but he's not that Jaleel County that is just, ripping past tackles, breaking out double teams.
Yeah,
He's not that anymore. But like, if you get him one on one, he could still get pressure on the quarterback, and if that quarterback rolls in his way, he'll get to him. So
yeah,
he's a guy I'd still want on my line, but I would want help.
yeah. He's not like a building block type of player
Yeah,
anymore. And they have Owe, who they took at the end of the first round, also from Penn State,
yeah,
a few years ago, and he's improved. Or at least that's my understanding. I loved Ojabo coming out, but
yeah.
it's you
The
like he's
injury,
already, yeah, his injuries have piled up and it's all lower body type stuff. And if he stays healthy now, like, cool, it's a luxury. You have three guys that you can rotate. But I don't want to rely on it too much, and just get
yeah,
Chop in there and let him and Owe be a little Penn State duo
yeah.
for the
You know
future.
exactly, and they've obviously shown that they can ball out together. So it'd be nice to see them together up in Baltimore. And I think it always seems that Baltimore just sits back. Doesn't matter where they're drafting, and there's some higher ranked guy just falls down the board straight to them. They take them every time. Doesn't matter where it is. It always
I'm still
happens.
salty about Kyle
Yep, Kyle
Hamilton.
Hamilton, and like it always happens to them, and they never. It's like every other team, most other teams, I should say, overthinks it, and Baltimore's just like, I'll stick the top guy on the board every time. It just rotates every time, and it works out for them most of the time. Granted, the last 2 years they've dealt with a lot of injuries, so you haven't been able to see it as
Yeah,
much.
they got to figure out their strength and conditioning.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll move on to 29 with Seattle. Their secondary set, it's phenomenal. Probably one of the best secondaries in the league. And I think it's a situation where I'm sitting there, I'm like, is Geno Smith? Do I want to keep Geno Smith? Like, that's really where I'm at. And at this point, I just have to say yes and, address quarterback later on, possibly. It's not as much of a need as it is with Atlanta and also probably Minnesota. So, like, they have a guy. So that's why I'm not reaching for a guy in the first that might necessarily then have the talent that I would take in the first. And so I'm going to go to the other side of the ball. It kind of not ruins it because I don't know his contract situation and he's a little older. But I'm going to address the D line, even though they just traded for Leonard Williams today. So it kind of shakes it up a little bit, but I'm not sure
I,
about him.
I I think he may be like a pending free agent.
Okay,
Truthfully,
so if that is the case, then
don't quote me on
it's
that
good.
though.
Yeah, it's okay. But even if he's a veteran, like an older veteran, I want some young, talent. You've pretty much hit on a lot of the cornerbacks, not cornerbacks, but a lot of the talent, the defensive side of the ball that you've been taking. So you have Tariq Woolen behind you, and you have Devon Witherspoon behind you. So I'm just gonna try to get after the quarterback. I'm gonna take a guy who I think would be the next in line for edge, and try to maybe finish out this edge run in the first round. A guy I think that has shown the talent. He's was a little hit or miss last year, but when he hits hard. JT Tuiamalu. I hope I said that last name
Tuimolu?
correctly.
I don't know.
Tuiamalu.
I don't know either way.
But I'm going to take him out of Ohio State. He's been playing well this year. Ohio State, he's not maybe racking up the sacks, but he's getting pressure on the ball. And that's what I want to see. I don't like sacks are hit or miss because if you face a lot of mobile quarterbacks, you're not going to get as many sacks, of course. So he's been showing the talent. He's definitely not edge one, edge two, edge three for me. But taking a number out edge five. Late in the first, I think you can get him on that D line, get Pete Carroll with him. Seattle's tech seems to usually get pass rushers. And I think they have Boy Mafe. I think he's been balling out. So get him with him and, see what happens. He's a power guy too, so I think they run a 3-4 if I'm not mistaken. And if you need to slide him inside for passing downs when needed, just he's a power guy. He's not going to beat you off the edge, so I like it.
Um, Yeah, so Leonard Williams is a pending free agent, so
Okay, perfect.
he may or may not walk. Um, they like for all intents and purposes, I think they do run a 3-4. I think you're right, but like you know, nowadays like most teams kind of
Yeah,
run multiple
it's
types of.
all yeah, it's all
Um, but I mean, I think JT works, and they could either have JT like play as that 3-4 edge kind of guy, or they like if he's athletic enough, they may let him play the stand up edge spot. Um,
I've just
I
never
think it
seen the
kind of depends on.
speed necessarily out of that. You know,
Yeah, I think it depends on testing.
yeah, I could be completely.
But I mean, at Ohio State, like they their edges are stand up guys. Like JT drops in the coverage, so that's like part of
Really,
why.
I need to pay attention
Like
to it more
well,
because I
like Penn
never see him
State, like
drop.
he had multiple
Yeah.
interceptions like
Oh
last
yeah,
year.
that game, the Penn
But
State game, that's gonna live in infamy.
yeah, but I mean, I think it's a Seattle pick for sure. Um, as long as it's not some small school guy
Yeah,
that's got some hype somewhere.
yeah,
But the Dolphins are kind of straightforward for me. Um, I'm gonna take Kingsley Sumataya from BYU, right tackle. He's got experience playing left tackle. He's an athletic freak. Um, Let him, slide onto that offensive line. They have some pending free agencies coming up. Uh, Isaiah Wynn, Connor Williams. So improve that line and protect Tua and make that McDaniel's offense better.
yeah. I mean, I like it. Just protect Tua, because that's when Tua's healthy, they're rolling. And you don't want to have to find another quarterback that can get that offense rolling like that. So just protect Tua, as much as possible. Um, so Kansas City. This one, it's kind of like
You know what you need to do.
I know what I want to do.
You know what you need to do.
What do I need to do? I want to know if it's what I'm thinking. I'm going mine. I'm doing mine no matter what. But
I mean, okay. Well, truthfully, I would be picking Troy Franklin here. That's just
okay,
my opinion, or
I like
AD
it.
Mitchell.
Really?
I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know if I really am like that sold on AD Mitchell being a first round pick, but I would want to get Mahomes guy. I think could be like a legitimate number one receiver personally. Um, I think Xavier Worthy would be the most fun, but I think it would
Yeah.
be
So it's
extremely frustrating because
yeah, yeah,
like his hands are not as good as Tyreek's. Let's just say
yeah.
that.
And so yeah, I mean, you hit it. I have 5 guys I have written as options. Obviously 2 of them were probably not going to be there. So I have 3 guys left. No order. And it's only receivers. I'm only going Kansas City receiver. You know how frustrated I am watching Mahomes throw it to nobodies. I mean, I do like Rasheed Rice now. He's developing, but he's not. He's a complementary piece. He's not that guy. So I do have Xavier Worthy. Like you said, most fun, but would definitely be a little bit of a headache. Um, I have Troy Franklin, who I think would be electric as well. A little bit more reliable, bigger body, I believe as well. And then I have Emeka Buka, who I think is
I forgot
probably
about Abuka.
yeah probably the safest option if I want to say that. I think he could be that consistent guy when needed, be open. So I'm gonna go with the guy who I was personally want, and that is gonna be Emeka Ibuka. He has, I think he's been hurt this year. I know. Obviously, living in Marvin Harrison's shadow is hard to do. Even living in JSN's shadow as well, and Marvin Harrison. So he's always been that third guy, but he is extremely solid. He's a good route runner. He knows how to get open. He catches the ball, and I want to get. I don't necessarily. It's always fun just slotting a fast burner to Kansas City. But I want to go a little bit different and get but he get Patrick Mahomes a more reliable receiver. He can only have Travis Kelsey for so long, and I want a guy who I think I can consistently count on getting open and consistently counting on catching the ball. And right now, Rasheed Rice is looking solid, but I don't think he's necessarily a guy who can get open. And I think Emeka Buka has shown the capabilities to be a pretty solid route runner.
I like Abuka. I mean, I'm interested in the testing because like I don't think
Mm-hmm.
he. I want to say like he's reported to like be like a 4-4 type of player or something like that, but like I don't see it on this field play speed wise.
That could just be
and
because
also
he's been around JSN, Marvin Harrison, other electric receivers.
Yeah. For reference though, for Troy Franklin, he's taller, but he's super skinny. Like he's like
I knew
180. He's a stick, but he apparently also runs like a 4.4. He's expected to run low 4.4s, high 4.3s.
I mean, I
apparently.
love me some Troy Franklin, so I wouldn't mind it as well. I mean, I think Xavier Worthy, as even though he's the most fun piece in the situation, he'd be my third option out of those three, because of those drop situations. And there's only so many times I can watch, Patrick Mahomes load up, be on the run, try to get a bailout throw, hit the receiver in his hands, and he just drops it. But he also makes those spectacular catches as well. So any of those three receivers would be good in Kansas City, but I'm just going to go with the safest option in the situation because they've swung and missed a couple times with receivers recently. And I think, especially this year, they're showing that they need another receiver. Patrick Mahomes is still great, but there's only so much he could do, and no one gets open for
him. This pick is easy for me. I don't care that Howie doesn't do it. Not one bit. I know it's one of those things. I'm taking Jeremiah Trotter Jr. The story, the symmetry of his dad, everything. It's too good for me to pass up.
Same
I
as
do
last
not
year.
care that Howie Roseman does not care about linebackers. I care about linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as last year where we were always mocking Joey Porter Jr. to Pittsburgh, and it happened. Granted, it was in the second round of the first round, but it still happened. So, I mean, I think they need linebacker. They do. I'm sorry, but that's like their one weakness. Well, I guess the secondary somewhat as well, but they're trying to retool it right now. But the D line is obviously good, so you get Jeremiah Trotter in there. I mean, he's arguably the best linebacker in the draft, if not, second to his teammate Barrett Carter. So I like it. It's just one of those situations where do you draft a linebacker in the first round, and Howie never has.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where I think it lines up with like how the sport's broken and how like their needs are. Especially like adding Bayard, like if they like their secondary's aging, but they've also like got youthful guys that are like backups that like can be contributing pieces still and continue to develop. Whereas like I don't think you're finding a linebacker in the later rounds or off the street that has like the combination of like athleticism and awareness that Jeremiah Trotter brings. Like he's a very smart player to go along with like his youthfulness and athleticism. So gotta do it in this situation because otherwise, like I don't like. Otherwise, it's a trade out for me. Because the best players besides him, in my opinion, are all defensive tackles for the most part, and like they've literally spent two straight
the one position they don't
first round picks on. Yeah.
Like there's a lot of positions they probably don't really need to necessarily address, but they can. But that's like the one that it's like, dude, literally make no sense to do interior defensive line.
Yeah, like I mean, if I'm not taking Trotter here, like I'm wanting to do Leonard Taylor, Mason Smith, who
both guys that should probably be in the first round. They just didn't fall this way.
Yeah, and then like you can make an argument for Kamari Lassiter. I'm not there on Kamari Lassiter, and then
I want to be there, but I don't want to be a homer. But I want to be there.
I'm not personally, and then like Troy Franklin's a guy like I think would be interesting, but do you really need to spend a first round pick when you have the wide receiver?
Yeah, AJ Brown,
that they have
Smith,
like
and Dallas Goedert.
Like you can go get a third or fourth round wide receiver, and you
can get a slot receiver, which is probably what they need in this second, third, fourth rounds, and be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, and they have Quez anyways, and Quez is their guy that's like the designated like runoff guy that just pulls the coverages away.
And they have Julio.
Hey, he caught a touchdown.
I know.
I've added him to my dynasty roster because I will never not roster Julio Jones if he's an active player.
Yeah.
I know. And I hope he gets his ring and then comes back to Atlanta.
I don't know if he gets the ring, but he can come back to Atlanta all he wants. But with that, we'll wrap up another episode of the Empirical Scouting Podcast. Follow us on all social media platforms, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Empirical_Scout. If you're listening to us on Spotify, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating. And if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button below. For Taylor and Taylor, we'll see you next time.
The better
Peace.
crew.